Okay, which brings us to the last principle here, and this actually encompasses many different activities that go into the actual process of communicating the brand through all the many platforms and media that you might use. But what we learned in looking at all of the plans that they have that come out of this process, and then you go out and you create your communication programs, and we determined that there are 4 key factors that come into play in determining what's going to be a successful program. The first one, and this is sometimes hard for everybody to get over, but there has to be a certain level of investment in this. You can't just build a strong brand on the cheap. Even in social media, you can't do it. There has to be some sufficiency of investment for the task that is at hand. Some companies will spend so little that they never even achieve enough of a threshold to make any impact. So even if you have limited resources, you have to use them wisely in a way that they can make impact, even if it's just a small one. Another finding in this regard had to do with the continuity of the strategy. I use some examples here of, well, GE for one, that have had a very similar strategy, a core promise that spans many decades, and even their taglines they've kept for like 10, 20 years at a time, having done brilliant campaign, because they've got a lot of money and have spent a lot of money, and they have done many brilliant campaigns under each one of those, but there is a fundamental continuity that connects it all. Where brands get into trouble is when they keep changing their strategy and they keep refreshing it, not just the expression of the brand, but the fundamentals that are being portrayed. A company like, for example, Burger King, who's notorious for having a brand strategy every time they change chief marketing officers, and that has been very, very frequent, has a great deal of difficulty ever getting traction because they're lacking in this continuity element. The third point to be made here has to do with consistency of messaging across all the points of contact that a customer or a stakeholder would come into. Doesn't mean that you're communicating with everybody with the same absolute message. As we said, you're going to talk to engineers differently than you would talk to consumers who talk to retailers differently. But there's some consistency in all of that, at least not contradicting from one message to the other. And then the final point here is clarity of brand meaning. Do people is what you were trying to say about the brand getting across? Is it being expressed clearly so that they understand what the fundamental process that's being made? And what we find that really strong brands, and there's, many, many examples to cite. I've got 4 of them up here. But exceptional brands have a very strong story, and they tell it often, and they tell it in imaginative ways. They tell it every place they can, and they make it compelling, and they make it relevant, and they make it meaningful. Sometimes they even make it very touching. So this is actually on this point about touching, I want to share one short example here because it's actually a brand that I admire a lot, but this is a good example of a phenomenon that I've noticed with many brands, which is actually being a champion either for a certain kind of customer or for a certain kind of business. And I think this one's actually kind of very relevant to you guys. But the one I'm talking about is American Express. And in general, American Express has been a very strong brand and serves as a champion for its customers in many different regards. It serves as a champion for brands that are traveling, and they've got concierge services and those kinds of things. But here I'm talking very specifically about their positioning and the efforts that they made for small and medium-sized businesses. Now, small and medium-sized businesses work with American Express in a couple of different ways. On one hand, if they deal with consumers or other businesses, American Express would like to see them offer their card to their customers for making payments. But they also would like these businesses to have their own American Express account for either handling their finances or buying business services or buying equipment and buying supplies and so forth. So going back to in the period shortly after recovery, in I think probably 2009, 2010, when we were coming out of the global financial crisis, American Express made a big effort focusing on small and medium-sized businesses and highlighting their role in the economic recovery because they saw that sector was growing faster and stabilizing faster than were other segments. So they did a lot of television advertising and online and so forth, encouraging them to open up American Express accounts, and they supported them with they created this open forum website that was a place for small businesses to go to. There was a lot of kind of white papers on managing business, and that was kind of very helpful for small businesses. And they even opened something called, I don't even remember how they pronounced it, ConnectedX, which was an online tool for helping them set up profiles and connecting with customers and communicating with their customers. So they're creating an environment here where there's things that go well beyond credit card usage but are useful for those small businesses. And in the course of that, they also came up with something that continues to this day, although it's moved beyond them a little bit, but they actually came up, the idea of Small Business Saturday originated with this American Express program for small businesses. And I think it's something that many of us have really come to look forward to, after the onslaught of a Black Friday and all the shopping and everything. This whole idea of go to a small local business, a shop, a boutique, whatever it might be in your neighborhood, is really nice, and this is just a wonderful example of being an advocate and a champion for a certain segment. And I use this because, it's something you have in common here where you guys are serving a segment of small and medium-sized manufacturers, obviously a different segment than what American Express has here, but I think it's something you can think about because you can be a champion for these. In many ways, you already are now. I'm not saying that you're not, but I think you've got an opportunity collectively and working with the network to leverage that. So those are the 6 principles that I identified that I wanted to share with you.